you all for watching. I do have another guest coming on now, and we're going to have our Chief Medical Officer from the Water Environment Federation, Dr. Andrew Sanderson. He joined WEF also a couple years ago in part as response to this COVID pandemic, and we are really grateful to have him. His role was also made possible with support from Xylem, so we want to acknowledge and thank Xylem for that work. So Dr. Sanderson, who is here, Chief Medical Officer with WEF, also an adjunct associate professor at Howard University, and a practicing gastroenterologist. I'll save my questions for off-camera for him on that front. Dr. Sanderson, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Travis.
Glad to have you here at WEF Tech again. Is this your second WEF Tech, I think?
This
right?
is my second, yes.
All right, great. It's a lot bigger this year than last year. It is booming. So.
It is. I wasn't prepared for how massive WEF Tech actually is.
Yeah. So you became the Chief Medical Officer of WEF in 2020. Came into kind of the water side. What are some of the things that have really stuck out to you that you've really learned, or maybe kind of surprises or revelations, if you will, of the past couple years?
Yeah. Well, Travis, I was new to the water industry, so there were lots of things for me to learn. And obviously, with your prior guest, Amy, learned a lot about wastewater disease surveillance and how important and critical it is to a public health response. Outside of that, through work that was done by Dig Deep in the U.S. Water Alliance, learned a lot about the water gap, where in this country, the richest in the world, we have over 2 million Americans who don't have access to clean water and sanitation. And so that was a critical understanding, and how we can close that gap and provide environmental justice, I think is really crucial. And then, I learned a lot about water affordability. I was able to work with the Duke, Nichols, and Aspen Institutes on water affordability, and even Americans who do have access, some struggle to be able to afford their sanitation and water services. And so I guess the biggest thing that I've learned in my 2 years is how much work it takes to provide the services that the water sector does.
Yeah.
The man hours, the science, the technology, it's really impressive.
Yeah, I was thinking of you during the last interview when she was talking about some of these things like E. coli, and I was like, oh, I know a doctor that knows about those issues there, right? One of the things WEF did last spring was hold its first ever public health conference.
Yes.
And I'd love for you to kind of talk about that event, what it was like, why the audience there, the attendees were a little bit different for WEF, and kind of some of your takeaways from that.
Yeah, so it was the first ever, as you mentioned, and we paired it with the Wastewater Disease Surveillance Summit. So we had individuals there who were from academia, who were from public health, who were from utilities, and really talked about some of the kind of salient issues that we're still trying to understand more about, right? So everybody is talking about PFAS and how it has some potential health concerns, and trying to figure out what those risks are, understanding like the infrastructure issues that we already have with things like lead and copper, which we know have significant impact on people's health. Talking about water reuse and how to get the public's mind wrapped around different sources of water and whether or not they can use it for things like agriculture. So all of those things were talked about in a robust fashion. It was in Cincinnati, and it was I think pretty well attended for the first conference. We're hoping to expand it and make it better the next time around.
Yeah, it was having been to a lot of WEF conferences myself, it was a very different audience. A lot of people that had never engaged with WEF before, public health professionals and researchers and so forth, and that was really impactful and incredible to see. So, what's on your plate now? What are you kind of working on now? What might be on the horizon for you as far as your work with the Water Environment Federation and with the water sector?
Yeah. So there are a lot of things that I'm interested in doing. I think the first of which is really understanding the health needs of water treatment professionals better. So when I first came on, I had the opportunity to tour Blue Plains and really get an understanding of that, advanced, water treatment facility. What I'd like to do is to go around the country to different areas, maybe not one as advanced and large as Blue Plains, and understand what is being done to conduct health assessments for water treatment professionals, and also see, through the insurance companies, what kind of wellness benefits are available, so that the people who are working so hard to protect the public's health are also protecting themselves and keeping healthy from that standpoint. Environmental justice is near and dear to my heart. We've seen all of the issues with stormwater pollution and with climate change. We expect with our aging infrastructure that we're going to see more and more of these issues. And so how can we assure the public that the water that they're drinking is safe? How can we guide resources, whether be from the Infrastructure Act or or other resources from the state, directed to these utilities that need them so badly to do updates and provide technology. And so I want to work on that. We're standing up a medical advisory panel. I need help, and so we want to get other professionals who've been in the water sector for decades and have a lot of knowledge to bring to help WEF to address some of these issues. Then, as you mentioned, the Public Health and Water Conference, we're going to be planning for another one of those. So a lot of things on the plate.
A lot, yeah. You rattled off a lot of things that you have learned about and have been working on, and now you got a long list of things that you want to keep working on too. That's incredible. Let's talk for a minute though about a recent situation in the news, or something that happened, Jackson, Mississippi, right, where you have this predominantly black community lose their water services for 2 weeks or something, 150,000 people. What was your reaction when you saw that situation?
So it's heart-wrenching, right? As I mentioned before, in the richest country in the world, we shouldn't have individuals who, on a regular basis, don't have access to water. But especially when we have, emergency situations, we should be able to get in and provide the resources that people need to stay healthy. I mean, obviously, water is a critical resource, right? We can't survive for more than a couple of days without clean water. And so making sure that in populations and in communities that don't necessarily have the political heft, that those people are being taken care of. Because if you're in a moderately wealthy area and you lose infrastructure, you're able to use your resources to purchase water, to do what you need to do, to move to another place until the problem is fixed. And so we have to make sure as Americans that we're taking care of everybody.
Sure. Lastly, I wanted to ask, you're here at WEF Tech, and we mentioned that from the beginning. It's big, it's back this year. What are you doing with your time here?
So I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I spent some time with the Disinfection and Public Health Committee, spent some time with the Wastewater Disease Community of Practice. I've stood in on the Federal Public Health and Water Conference, as well as diversity and inclusion, which I think is really important to try to bring in, other life experiences to the water sector, so that those experiences and knowledge can help to move us forward.
Yeah, and as a medical professional, as a doctor, I don't know if you've been able to walk around yet, really, the exhibit floor and see any of the equipment or some of like the real technical kind of scientific stuff that's going on.
I have. I just stop into booths and try to understand the aeration process and all of these different things. This is actually a really big conference. I was talking to some of my colleagues because as a gastroenterologist, we do DDW, which I thought was huge, and this is actually bigger than that. And I want to make sure that today I get over to see the Operators Challenge, because last year I missed it, and I was told I have to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how those are the guys really that are making it happen, right? They are the ones cleaning that water right there, and their skill set and how quick they can do things. They're doing lab lab tests to, cutting pipes, testing water, and all that. So it's impressive. Well, Dr. Sanderson, we're really proud to have you be part of our WEF community. We think it's really important, critically important, to have a chief medical officer. So thank you for serving in this role, and thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. It's been my honor and privilege.